What's going on, guys? Yash Talaliker here, back with another episode on the Winning Browns podcast. Well, not really. Today, we're going to be doing something different. This is the debut episode of the Yash Talaliker show on said Winning Browns podcast. We want to be able to put out more individual content on a more consistent basis for you guys. Be able to give you more news updates on what is happening on the NFL at the very least at the very most daily, at the very least a few times a week, and be able to give you just overall more, knowledge as for or more insight on what we think about the game of football as it continues over the years and over the weeks this next season and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about some of the biggest news headlines over the past week of football, specifically two headlines coming from the state of Ohio. Those being, of course, the Bengals situation as far as their contract holdout with Shemar Stewart, which we'll get to later on. But the first one I want to go over is the Quinshon Judkins situation in Cleveland, a situation that has turned out to be pretty dire for obvious reasons. Quinshon Judkins this past week was accused of domestic violence on not necessarily his girlfriend, but someone who he was living with, a female who he's living with, and who then they got back into a relationship. Um, Based on the information from the police report, the woman claimed that Quinshon had learned some stuff about her from his family members, saw it on a phone while they were at the airport. She tried to convince him that those things were not true, and he ended up socking her in the mouth. Later on, when they were a car, she ended up getting hit by him in the thigh and the arm. And according to her, she didn't really talk about it or really complain to the police at all because she kind of felt sorry. Kind of felt guilty if she was going to complain due to what Quinshon Judkins had already done as far as success level. If you guys want to see the full report, I'll put it in the description of the video. I don't want to, sound like I'm kind of um, I don't want to paraphrase something that and take it out of context and leave people up for interpretation. So I'll leave the link in the description as far as the police report or at least some of the news articles I've seen on it. But obviously anytime that domestic violence shows up in the case of the NFL, it is a serious problem, whether the NFL handles it right or wrong, as they've shown in many different instances, they've handled it in different ways, whether it's the Ezekiel Elliott accusations back in 2017, or the more famous ones being with, of course, Ray Rice back in 2013. Or even if you want to look at another former Cleveland Browns running back, that would be Kareem Hunt in 2018 when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs. But with this situation itself, the Browns have been taking up majority of the decision making as far as what to do next with Quinshon Judkins. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins was a second round pick for the Cleveland Browns this past season. He is a second round pick in 2025, a very unprecedented year for second round picks, being this is the year where a lot of second round picks are getting fully guaranteed deals. Obviously, it started with the Texans, Jaden Higgins. The Browns followed suit, and they still have two second round picks who are still looking to be locked up as far as guaranteed deals. Several other teams have also gone in following the Texans and the Browns as far as guaranteed deals recently. Quinshon Judkins' own teammates, JT Tuimoloau, got a fully guaranteed deal with the Indianapolis Colts. Travion Henderson got a fully guaranteed deal with the New England Patriots. But it doesn't look like Quinshon Judkins is going to get that deal anytime soon. Obviously now because of these accusations. And the Browns recently just told him also to just stay home. So it looks like before his career has even began, Quinshon Judkins might not be a Cleveland Brown. There's a good chance that he could be cut. And even if he doesn't, there's a very good chance he could also very well be suspended. Some people are speculating it could be somewhere from 3 to 6 games. that's probably what I would expect from the NFL if we're kind of going based on what they've done in the past. Obviously, there's the legal process outside of the NFL and what that does, but with how serious domestic violence is always is and always should be treated, um, it's not only bad PR for Quinshon Judkins for obvious reasons and should be, but it's also bad PR for the NFL. And to see as the league has evolved in the last 12 years from the Ray Rice situation and how the NFL handled that to now, it's going to be interesting to see how the Cleveland Browns or how the NFL in general um, moves forward with Quinshon Judkins being on the team. And, as far as the Browns go, they lost their replacement for Nick Chubb. This next season, Quinshon Judkins was supposed to be emerging as possibly the future starting running back for the Browns, and that's not going to be the case anymore if he ends up getting cut. But it's going to be interesting once again to see, though, what the Browns themselves end up doing, whether they end up cutting Quinshon Judkins or not. But it looks like that might be the case right now. And I will say this as far as this whole Judkins situation goes, just in general. First off, when it comes to this whole situation, if Quinshon Judkins is fully guilty of everything this woman is accusing him of, he should be given the book completely, thrown the book at, and given the whole 9 yards as far as punishment goes by the NFL and the system of law, as far as suspended, punished, cut by the Browns. Put behind bars and sentenced of some degree. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to try to speculate on what type of sentence he should get or what type of sentence he deserves. But that woman does deserve justice for what happened to her, if that is the case. And just as far as a general standpoint, number one, there is no justification whatsoever at any point for a man putting his hands on a woman of any kind. The only time you should ever even think about that is if you're acting in self-defense. And clearly, based on what this woman is accusing Quinshon Judkins of, that was not the case as far as the accusation goes. The accusation is very much that Quinshon Judkins initiated the violent act towards this woman. And that type of behavior, if true, is never, ever, ever acceptable. And it should always be punished. And then, as far as these accusations go, I've seen people try to defend Judkins and, say that the woman is basically exaggerating or she's fabricating the story, or why didn't she say things, why didn't she accuse or go to the police earlier? First off, she said why she didn't go to the police earlier, and this is a very common situation with partners of athletes or people who are just generally successful, where you feel guilty if they just hit a successful moment in their career, and you want to feel happy for them and not take that away, but at the same time you want to protect yourself. So if that was the case with this woman, I completely understand where she's coming from. And there's nothing wrong with feeling guilty and feeling scared of what would happen to your partner if you end up going to the police. But she did the right thing, and she did go to the police and press charges against Judkins as she did. And again, if they are true, Judkins should very well be punished. But as far as the NFL goes, and as far as that situation, they are going to punish Judkins no matter what. This is bad PR for the NFL. These types of situations always will be for the NFL. And especially after how they mishandled the Ray Rice situation, they're going to be a lot more strict as far as punishment anytime a player gets involved with such domestic violence issues as with Quinshon Judkins, just pretty much to cover their ass at the very minimum, let alone on top of that to make sure that the player who deserves justice for any type of situation like this where he puts his hands on a woman, or just puts his hands on anyone off the field, it gets punished, and it should. And Quinshon Judkins will be punished for that, just for the sake that is bad PR. And if he's guilty, he will be punished even more. And that to me is very, very much certain. And again, like I said, never okay to hit a woman. So if this is true, when it comes to Quinshon Judkins being accused, he should be thrown at the book. I don't know what exactly happens though after this whole situation. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the Browns keep him on the team, whether they cut him, whether they give him a second chance. Obviously, they've already told Quinshon Judkins, like I said, to stay home. So again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks, next few months, as far as the NFL investigation and as far as punishments on and off the field go. A few other things I want to get into before we talk about the Shemar Stewart situation. First off, George Karlaftis has re-signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, has been extended, by the Kansas City Chiefs. We're talking about 4 years, $93 million, including $62 million guaranteed. This goes without saying. I mean, George Karlaftis is one of the best players on that Kansas City Chiefs defense. He has been phenomenal for the Chiefs when it comes to postseason play. He had a great Super Bowl game against the San Francisco 49ers 2 years ago. He was on the verge of a breakout season this past year. He was, if I'm not mistaken, my breakout player of my potential breakout player for 2024 for the defensive line, the edge rusher position. And although he didn't necessarily break out into a superstar, like I said, he's still one of the best players on that Kansas City Chiefs defense, and absolutely well deserves the money. And because he's still an above average defensive end, but not one of the, top 10, top 5 defensive ends, it's very easy, I feel, for this Chiefs team to be able to extend Karlaftis, valuable enough where he can be paid handsomely for what he's done for this team, but also not they don't have to pay him as much money as some of the top edge rushers in the league, to the point where they feel like they're being out leveraged at times and where contract negotiations could stall. So, this is a win-win for the Chiefs. They get one of their best defense players back, and George Karlaftis, congrats on the great deal. And this is a great move. This goes without saying. The other move that I was going to talk about is the Zach Tom extension for the Green Bay Packers. Zach Tom was extended 4 years, $88 million, including a $30.2 million signing bonus, which is believed to be the largest ever by an offensive lineman. I don't know if I would have given him $22 million. Zach Tom is one of the better right tackles in the league, but right tackles itself, they're kind of weighed differently on the scale of contracts compared to blindside tackles. Obviously, blindside tackles are seen as a little bit more valuable, and Zach Tom isn't necessarily one of the players you'd look at as one of the top 5 right tackles in the league. So I don't know if I would pay him $22 million, let alone on top of that a $30.2 million signing bonus, $22 million per year, But at the same time, he is one of the better tackles, right tackles in the league. He's still above average, and you're talking about a guy who started his career as a 4th round pick, finished 3rd in All-Pro voting last year, so he had his best season last year, and he has started every game for each of the last 2 seasons, and he has emerged overall into a much, much better player as the years gone on. But I do think that I would love to see how much guaranteed money overall that Zach Tom got before I can really say, give a full determination on how good this extension is. But as far as just the player goes, I have nothing bad to say about this. Zach Tom should have been extended by the Packers, and I'm glad he did. For them, they now have one of the better players on their offensive line back, someone who could protect Jordan Love for the near future, for the next half decade. And Zach Tom, congrats on the deal. I think the biggest thing, though, we're going to be talking about today is the Shemar Stewart situation, what's going on in Cincinnati. To me, this is just absolutely disgusting and ridiculous as far as how bad this situation has got for the Bengals. Obviously, we're talking about a franchise that is notoriously cheap when it comes to retaining their players. We talk about the Dallas Cowboys and how they stall on extensions for days and days, and even the 49ers do this very same thing. But the Cincinnati Bengals are another team who stalls in extensions at the very least. We saw them do that with T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. But as far as defensive players, this is a team who has been at a stalemate with Trey Hendrickson for the last year and a half, who Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade from them, not once, but twice. They cut Jermaine Pratt because they didn't want to extend him. And I've heard the comments about how Jermaine Pratt is not necessarily the same player that he was a few years ago. But again, this is a Bengals team whose defense is not great, and you cut the captain of your defense, who is still one of your better players, without really truly replacing him. And it just seems like this Bengals front office has no plan as far as what to do next with their free agency. And, I've heard the arguments about, okay, they're spending a lot of cap on Joe Burrow. They're spending a lot of cap on Ja'Marr Chase. They're spending a lot of cap on T. Higgins. And obviously that takes a lot overall money away from being able to spend on the defense. But again, this is a team, as far as Shemar Stewart goes, who, he was their first round pick, who they picked to supposedly replace Trey Hendrickson when he left in free agency next year, as his contract, his contract expires next season, and you have not extended him. So, I mean, to me, this makes zero sense. And it's not like Cincinnati is, down in cap hell or anything like that. Right now, as it stands, they got $31 million in cap space to spend this season. Next season, they have $66 million in cap space. So if they extend Trey Hendrickson, it shouldn't hurt them as far as being able to re-sign at least someone on a rookie deal like Shemar Stewart. And now Shemar Stewart is practicing with the Texas A&M squad, and there are jokes that he's going to now suit up for Texas A&M. But the fact that Mike Brown, the owner and the self-implied GM of the Cincinnati Bengals, came out and basically talked about how he doesn't want to pay money if a player gets arrested. Well, first off, if you don't want to pay a player who's got arrested, then why would, and you feel that that's going to be a problem with Shemar Stewart, why would you draft him, right? That's what the pre-draft process is about. And secondly, Shemar Stewart has not had a lot of trouble. He has not had any trouble with the law as far as I'm concerned. So if this is just about, guaranteeing money for a player in case he gets in trouble with the law, that, I don't know what type of question or concern Mike Brown has, because this is not the case and should not be the case with Shemar Stewart, given he's not been in trouble with the law. But a rookie deal should never be this difficult, where you're worried about a player, worried about extending a player because of, what guaranteed money you don't want to give him if he gets arrested, while you're also worrying about the contract situation of quite literally your best defensive player and the league leader in sacks last year, who you're trying to replace with Shemar Stewart. So to me, this just once again goes to show just how cheap this Bengals organization is. And I've been talking about it years. The way that they handled contract situations when it came to Carlos Dunlap, and at the very least, you could argue that Carlos Dunlap was at the end of his career. But what they've done with Chad Ochocinco and Carson Palmer, what they did in the 1990s. Obviously, this is one of the very few teams that doesn't have for a long time, didn't have a true training facility, a true practice facility. It's just ridiculous how cheap Mike Brown is as an owner. This is exactly why the Bengals defense was the worst defense in the league last year. They had a very good, very talented defense in 2023 who was ravaged by injuries. They lost all those players. And essentially, as bad as that defense was Lou Arnumo essentially just became the scapegoat for that defense, and I do think he was going to be fired one way or another. But this Bengals team is not going to go anywhere if they continue to make the same mistakes as far as, not being able to be, to spend the money necessary to retain their players, especially defensively. They've done it offensively. They have one of the best offenses in the league. But if you're going to rely on, Shemar Stewart, a rookie who you're not even going to extend, and then him not playing, and then, him risking and being willing to risk next year being a free agent and being able to sign with any team he wants. Now, whether that happens or not is a different story. But the fact that the Bengals are willing to go to that level when they already have their best defensive player who plays the same position as Shemar Stewart, also wanting an extension and not getting it when he's a free agent next year, just because you guys are cheap, it just doesn't sit well to me. And I think it's incredibly telling on why the Bengals have been one of the least successful franchises of the last 30 years, why prior to 2022, they had not made a Super Bowl in 32 years, and why they have been one of the worst franchises in the league during that time span. And it goes to show to me, again, why Mike Brown is just one of the worst owners, not just in football, but in sports, as far as just how cheap he is. And this situation just needs to be solved right away. And I can't believe that this situation continues to happen. But, let me know what you guys think in the comments section. And, we'll hopefully see Shemar Stewart get extended in the near future. We'll hopefully see what happens as far as the Quinshon Judkins situation goes in the next few weeks. But until next time, make sure to like and follow and share this video. Make sure to follow us on TikTok and make sure to spread the information about the Yash Talalakar show, as well as the Winning Brown podcast, as well as check us out on Spotify. Until next time, see you guys later. Peace.